And welcome, everyone, to our weekly AP Top 25 poll reaction, Player of the Week, Team of the Week, and the games to watch. I'm Andy Katz here on Bleacher Report. Obviously, you can see this repurposed on NCAA.com and on March Madness MBB on our social media platforms. All right, we have a new number one. You will see shortly from my Power 36. I share this. And I should say that my Power 36, even though I put it together Sunday, the AP Top 25 polls, voters put theirs in Sunday. Now, we do post ours before this. I can't say I influence because it just happens to be similar. But anyway, I digress. UConn 1, Purdue 2, Kansas 3, Carolina 4. I agree with those top four wholeheartedly. You'll see in a moment when we get to my Power 36. Let's peel this back a little here. First, UConn, without Donovan Clingan, is playing like maybe the best team in the country. Stefan Castle is playing at a high level. Remember, he was hurt at the beginning of the year, so we never saw his full potential till we're seeing it grow. Alex Caravan, Cam Spencer, they got shooting. Diarra's played really well for them. A little bit of everything. Danny Hurley has a chance to win back-to-back national championships for the first time since Florida did it, 06-07. And let's just look. We know that top 25 is a snapshot in time. It is, what have you done for me lately in terms of the rankings, not seeding. I'm going to continue to hammer this point home every week. I do this every year. The rankings are different than the bracket and the seedings. The ranking is, what are you doing now? Who are you now? Who have you beaten? Where have you won? The bracket, that is a moving target because it's going to change constantly for all of us that do it. I don't do it as frequently as others. It's the body of work. It's the whole body of work. And so you're going to see some ones and twos that will be up there that maybe aren't in the top four. Case in point, I know a lot of people at Arizona as a one seed, for example. They're not in the top four right now. And they may or they may not be at this moment in time. So UConn won its games last week. Won on the road at Xavier. Purdue lost by double figures at Nebraska. I think Nebraska's really good, but did lose double figures. Then came back and beat Penn State. Kansas, bad loss at UCF. That's why they didn't move up to one. Carolina keeps winning. Now, UConn did beat Carolina in New York. I was there, but that was in December. So if UConn, and I will continue to say this as well, let's just say UConn had lost at Xavier, you could have made an argument that Carolina was the number one team in the country this past week. I know they played, but they played in December with Clingan. It's a different team. But UConn didn't lose, and they deserve to be number one. So Houston at 5, I think that's too high right now. They lost 2 road games in the Big 12, at Iowa State, at TCU. Tennessee lost to Mississippi State, but again, everyone's losing. Duke, I like that at 7. Kentucky at 8. That's fine. You'll see where I have it. Baylor back up high. I agree. Memphis, yes. Wisconsin, I have them in the top 10. You'll see. Arizona lost at Washington State. They got to be dinged for that. You got to push them down. I like Auburn higher up. Illinois lost Sunday to Maryland. I think they should be further down. Oklahoma lost to Kansas. That's fine. Utah State, great win over UNLV. They got a big game Tuesday night against New Mexico. We'll talk about that momentarily. Marquette lost 2 in a row. They should be dinged. Creighton, I don't know. I think they're sort of in the right range. I like TCU finally in here. BYU did bounce back after that Cincinnati loss, so I'm okay with them somewhere in the range, but I didn't have them. But that's, you want to make that argument, that's fine. They did lose to Baylor. Dayton, glad to see it. Glad to see them ranked. They're the best team in the A-10. Ole Miss, look, I don't have FAU ranked because FAU's lost a couple games in the American. Well, they lost to Charlotte outside of the American. They lost to Charlotte and then lost to Florida Gulf Coast. So they got more work to do for me. Iowa State and Texas Tech, I like seeing that. They're both playing really well right now. So before we get to questions, let's go through some house cleaning here. Let's go to my Power 36. Let's start at the top. 1 through 13 here. And you'll see some similarities and you'll see some differences. UConn, Purdue, Carolina, Kansas, Tennessee, Memphis, Duke, Auburn, Wisconsin, Kentucky. I think those are the 10 teams playing the best basketball right now. I got Baylor and TCU. TCU, great week, beating Oklahoma and Houston. You don't see Houston there in the top 12. Baylor playing much better. So let's go to 13 through 24, I believe it is. If you look at 13 through 24, that's where we've got some of the similar teams to that section of the top 25. There you see Houston. Alabama, really high in the tide. They're undefeated in the SEC. They were nowhere in the top 25. Oklahoma dinged, Arizona dinged, Marquette a little, same with Illinois. Seton Hall, again, playing very well. I got them high up. Utah State, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, Dayton, Oregon, undefeated in the Pac-12. They deserve to be in the top 25. And now 25 to 36. Iowa State, you see them right there. Creighton, I moved down. St. John's, they beat St. John's by 1. Villanova. Those 3 teams, by the way, right now in the Big East, you could put in any order. I think they're so close right now. Creighton, St. John's, Villanova. There's New Mexico. Great win over San Diego State, right behind them. Wake Forest has played well for the most part. Northwestern, I thought played really well against Wisconsin, road loss. Prior to that, won at Penn State. Nebraska, the win over Purdue, but then lost to Iowa. Michigan State, I was there on Sunday. Good win over Rutgers. I still think they're one of the 36 best teams in the large category. There's Clemson. I moved them down. And there's Boise. Boise beat Colorado State and beat Nevada. So Boise, now you could argue the Mountain West is at least 5 or 6 deep. At least. They're not going to get 6, but they may get 5. So my player of the week nationally and my team of the week. Just a tremendous performance by, drum roll, as we click to that, keep you in suspense if you haven't seen it, Deron Holmes II. 30 points in a road win, double-double at Duquesne. He is putting up All-American numbers for the Flyers. Huge buzz out of him. Last year did not have his great year, was not his 100%. Dayton didn't have, but he's back, and I think the Flyers will be a potential second weekend team if he continues to play the way he's playing right now. Team of the week, as I mentioned, TCU. TCU resuscitated its season. If you remember last week, they were within a whisker, 1 possession of winning at Kansas. This past week, they knock off Houston and Oklahoma. They are now 2-1. Could have been 3-0 in the Big 12. That's how things can change dramatically because TCU did not have a great trip to Hawaii, where they lost to Georgia Tech. So they thought they were going to win the Rainbow. Didn't happen. And TCU now is Emmanuel Miller with a game winner. They are a team to be reckoned with in the Big 12. Before we get to your questions, let's look ahead to this week, our top 10 games to watch. So Indiana not playing the best basketball right now. Did lose at Rutgers, but then bounced back and, had a solid win this past week. Remember, they beat Ohio State at home the previous week. So they've had good home wins. And this game is in Bloomington. A year ago, they swept Purdue, even though Purdue won the regular season and the tournament title. That was with Trace Jackson Davis. But this is a huge game, and it's always a great rivalry game. Always. It ends up being a tremendous rivalry game. I was just trying to blank there. It was Minnesota that they just beat at home, but Purdue, that's another level. So it's a great rivalry game. It'll be great atmosphere at the Shot Tuesday night at Assembly Hall. So that's number one. Alabama, Tennessee. Alabama's playing its best basketball of the season right now. Tennessee is a Final Four potential team. Creighton at UConn. UConn, number 1 team in the country right now. Creighton, this game's going to be up and down. It's going to be way high flying. Be interested to see if Kalkbrenner has an advantage, with no Klingon. But still, I expect the UConn win, but I think Creighton's going to get this game going in the 80s. Utah State and New Mexico. Utah State, undefeated in the Mountain West Conference. Now got to go down the pit where the Lobos just knocked off San Diego State. This is going to be a great game on Tuesday night. St. John's at Seton Hall. The rivalry renewed. Shaheen Holloway, Rick Pitino. Both teams are looking tournament good right now. Love this matchup at this point in the season. Villanova at Marquette. Villanova's been kind of a strange team. They've had a good run on the road, except for in the state of Pennsylvania. And Marquette's lost some home games. Very surprising. Ole Miss at Auburn. Chris Beard bounced back after that loss to Tennessee with a couple of home wins. Now he goes to what has been one of the best home courts in the country, and Bruce Pearl's got the Auburn Tigers rolling. Georgia at Kentucky. Mike White quietly, understated, has Georgia playing very well right now. One SEC loss. Kentucky coming off that game where they almost won at Texas A&M. Game went into overtime. But this is sort of a pretender contender. I'm not expecting Georgia to win, but how does Georgia play at Rupp when Kentucky's certainly going to want to prove itself even more so in this matchup? Texas Tech at Houston. So you got the Red Raiders. Grant McCaslin's got them 3-0. A little bit of a bumpy start, but now they've rectified it in the Big 12. Houston losing 2 road games, 1-2, beat West Virginia at home in the Big 12. Good test for both teams. And then San Diego State at Boise State. I mentioned Boise State, number 36 in my Power 36. They're winning games in the Mountain West Conference. San Diego State will have a home game before this, but then they go on the road again to another tough road environment after losing at the Pit. The Mountain West Conference, I think, is going to produce some of the best, most competitive games of any league this season. All right, so let's go and take some of your questions, to just sort of get they're flying by on my right side here, okay? But so thank you for putting up the top 25. So the question was, why the heck is Auburn not in the top 10? I agree with you. They are top 10 worthy. I don't have an answer for that. R. Willie says Texas Tech is a dark horse to win it. If you're talking about the Big 12, I still don't think so. Certainly not to win the national championship. I saw a question fly up about where is Oregon. Again, I agree with you. Oregon, it was number 25 in my Power 36. They are nowhere to be found in the AP Top 25. Tiger Grizz says Memphis. Yeah, Memphis. Again, top 10. They're worthy. Big Busa says Blue Devils are coming for your souls. They are rising right now. Good to hear Jeremy Roach is playing well. Trey Robinson says UNC should be number 2. You can make that argument. If you want to put them 2, I have no problem with that. I have them where they are. I'm not disrespecting Auburn. Lumar says, who's my top 5 for National Player of the Year? All right, pause here for a minute. I got to think. It's Zach Edey, and then there's a drop. Okay. In terms of your All-American list, that's what your top 5 is. So Hunter Dickinson's put up the numbers. No question about it. Also on this list, as I'm looking at the teams here to jog my memory, you could make an argument that Deron Holmes, who we just talked about, my player of the week, potentially should be on there. I'll be interested to see if Dalton Connect gets a lot of love. He could potentially be on there. RJ Davis could be on there from Carolina because he's had a great run. Tyler Kolek was a player that was a consensus first-team All-American. I'm not so sure he is now. So I think we have to wait and see how that all plays out. If he would be deserving of that. Hold on one second. I want to answer this even better than that and give you my so we can say that. Okay, let me answer this better. So for sure, Zach Edey, clear. I think you make a strong argument that, as I said, Deron Holmes is on that list as well. Hunter Dickinson, 3. These are people that put up the numbers. Kevin McCullough, too, but I'd say Hunter Dickinson. Kyle Filipowski from Duke has put up numbers that should make him a first-team All-American. So that's 4. I was really high on Jaden Ledee from San Diego State. We'll see if he can hold that position. If he can't, maybe it's RJ Davis from North Carolina. Could it be Mark Sears from Alabama or Broom from Auburn? These are all players that I think would get consideration. David Jones from Memphis would also have to be a player that would get some consideration. I guess what I'm also saying is, more than anything, that outside of Zach Edey, the spots are open, and I think this will be a fluid conversation. We had this conversation in early January, and I think that that we're going to have it. And maybe this is I'm saying this out loud. Maybe we should have this again and get some, certainly some feedback, because I think it's really fluid in terms of the other spots. What Big Ten teams do I see making the tournament? Tyler is great says. Oh, thank you, Brian, for mentioning Tristan Newton. I didn't say him before about UConn. Big Ten. Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Ohio State, and Northwestern. Those five, I think, for sure are going to make it. I feel fairly confident Nebraska is, and Michigan State at the end of the day. So that's 7. So the question is, who's 8? It should be Indiana. Will they hold that spot? Will they even get 8? They may not. I think the other 3 contenders for a potential 8th Big Ten spot, because I don't feel 9, are Iowa, Maryland, and Minnesota. Those are probably the 3 schools that potentially could dislodge Indiana as the 8th, but Indiana may not make it either. The net is not the biggest rating for the tournament resume. It is one of the factors. So Lamont says, don't forget about Baycott for Player of the Year, and I'm not. There's a whole lot of games left in the ACC. What SEC teams do I see getting in the tournament? So let's go with Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn, Ole Miss, Alabama, Mississippi State, 6. And I think there's a good... Then you've got a Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. So one of those 3 for sure, I think, will end up making it. So Tiger Fan says PJ Hall over Filipowski. Originally I did have him up there, but I think Clemson's recent slide has hurt his candidacy. How far can Dayton go? They can go second weekend. Why not? No question they could. It's more than that's more than possible. Yeah, Zero Dark says since the Memphis loss, Clemson's not been the same team in the ACC. They started 9-0. Something to be said for that. Does the Big East have a chance of putting 3 teams in the Mountain War? No. At one point, I would have said 2, but now I just think 1 in UConn. UConn's the favorite. What Big 12 teams, says Mr. Lutz, are going to make it? So let's do that. We got Kansas, Houston, Oklahoma, TCU, and I think Iowa State will make it. I think you then have BYU, not convinced yet, BYU, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, K-State. Did I say Baylor? Baylor's in, if I didn't say them. And then the other one would be, I feel like I'm missing one. Oh, Texas. 5 of those are 5, probably for 3 spots. I think the Big 12 will have the most teams in the tournament and the highest percentage of teams in the tournament. Amin wants to know how many teams from the ACC. So, Carolina, Duke, for sure. Clemson, I think will be in. And then it gets interesting because then you've got a bunch of teams like Virginia right now is not a tournament team. NC State's not a tournament team right now. Miami still could be. I feel pretty good about Wake. I think Wake would join Duke and Carolina, as a team that I think is ultimately going to get there. And Syracuse, I wouldn't put them out yet. I think they're going to somehow factor into the race as well. If UConn beats Creighton, how long can they keep the number one spot? Well, they certainly could keep it for quite a ways. Is Memphis a 2 or 3 seed? Right now, I'd say Memphis is probably a 2. If Kentucky would have won, would they have been number 2? I think they would have been 3 at the worst. Do I think Wisconsin can win in the Big Ten, Bryce? Of course they can. They've got a 2-game lead on Purdue. And they play Purdue twice. Just beat them once, and they're going to win the Big Ten. Down year for the WCC. Aside from the tourney winner, what are the chances for an at-large bid? Right now, I'd say 0. I think that you're looking at the Zags at this point, unless they beat Kentucky on the road. I think the Zags have to win the WCC tournament. All right, 19 J prices. How many teams are making it from the Mountain West Conference? I think it could be 5. And there's 6 for 5. Because you got San Diego State, Colorado State, New Mexico, Utah State, Nevada, and Boise. So, yeah, Nevada, Boise, New Mexico, San Diego State, Colorado State, and Utah State. So it could be 6 teams for 5. At the very worst, it's going to be 4. At the very worst. That's the worst case scenario. Do I think South Carolina can make a run? They got to get in first. They're not given. If Duke wins the ACC, do they get a number 1 seed? I'm not going to say no because I think it's still very fluid on the one line, but I would be surprised. Do I believe Auburn could be a 1 seed? Shoot, if Auburn wins the SEC like with 1 loss or something, sure they could. UNC playing Kentucky again. I can't see the whole thing. Oh, who do I have? Right now, I'd take Carolina. My top 3 college coaches right now. Wow. I'd say it probably is the top 3 that you see on your screen. Hurley, Painter, and Self. Not that others are doing a bad job, but they're probably the top 3 right now. I think you can make a fair argument for that. It's the last question here from A. Brown. We've almost gone 30 minutes, and I appreciate your time here. Is this as balanced as I've seen it? No, but I think in the last few years, this is the reality. That we're going to have pretty even because of the portal, the extra COVID year, which has 1 more year to go through. So we got older teams across the board. No question about it. All right, I got to ask one last thing about the Pac-12. How many teams? Arizona and Oregon for sure. That's for sure. Then you've got a collection of teams. Colorado, Utah, technically Arizona State, are in the mix. I just don't see right now. USC and UCLA have not done it. Washington's dropped off. Washington State's had a couple good wins, but their resume's not there. Could the Pac-12 get 2? Sure, they could. I think they'll get at least 3, and there's a chance for 4, but we'll see. All right, as always, you can go to our Bleacher Report app. We can discuss this. You can see what we discussed here. NCAA.com, March Madness MBB. You can find me at the Andy Katz on Twitter X. That's what I call it. And on Instagram at the real Andy Katz. Every Monday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, right here, up until selection champ week, I guess, would be the last one, that Monday of champ week. We break down the AP Top 25. Then obviously we get in the tournament. We'll be doing this throughout the course of the tournament, and more brackets to come over the next month or so. Key date, remember, February 17th at 12:30 Eastern time on CBS. The NCAA Selection Committee on the men's side is going to release its top 16. So as of that moment in time, the committee is going to give us seeds 1 through 4 in 4 regions, 16 seeds. And that really helps us sort of give us a blueprint of where teams are. And it's not an exact science, but usually about 3/4 of those 16 stay in the 16 on Selection Sunday. So that'll be good to watch. As always, stay warm out there. It is freezing across the country. I was in Michigan on Sunday. It was so cold. Obviously, all across the Midwest, it is freezing. So stay warm, stay healthy, and I appreciate all your engagement here on this app.